All right, everybody, we're back. It's week 10, and there's still bye weeks, which sucks, but there's less of them this time around and less good offenses. So I think it's going to be a good week. How you doing, Joe? You doing good?
Pretty good. Yeah, this will. I think it'll be a fun week. Well, definitely, it'll be more fun than last week to play. Last week was tough. We actually did all right, but it just wasn't as fun to pick the teams. It didn't feel like you had as many options.
Last week to me felt like there were some people who, like, for lack of a better term, I guess, really solidified themselves as like people that I feel like I can trust, right? And we're going to talk about some of those people moving forward, but yeah, especially in some of our DFS lineups, we what I would consider, I don't know if I would call it going out on a limb for some people, but we put our faith and stock in some people that we maybe thought were going to produce last week, and it was just like a resounding yes that they can be used moving forward, because this is also going to be a bit of a tough week. There were some suspensions handed down. There's just more and more injuries as the season goes through. We avoided a big one with AJ Green not getting suspended, so that was pretty lucky. We lost him for the rest of the last game, so if you had him in season long, that was really a bummer, especially if you're looking for, this is where you're in the thick of it. Like, some people just really need that last win to maybe clinch their spot in the playoffs. Some people need it to stay alive, and then, obviously everybody else that's in the middle, you don't want any more chaos added to your schedule than you absolutely have to. So people that owned AJ Green last week, it was just kind of a toughie, but avoided suspension going forward. It kind of sucks for fantasy owners that Jalen Ramsey is didn't get suspended this way going forward, though, because it's tough. It's tough when you got to go up against him. And we got some Chargers receivers going this week that might be useful, but otherwise. But anyway, Joe, last weekend we saw some interesting games, and some wound up being more interesting than they initially led on, especially one of those being the Eagles-Broncos. I'm like really just I guess I'm continually surprised each week, one, with how well the Eagles continue to click on, and number two, just how low the Broncos have come. But I guess we should have suspected it with Brock Osweiler starting. Did you get to watch the game? What did you think of it? That to me was my most surprised game of the week, even with how good the Eagles have been and how bad the Broncos have been.
The score of that game is really surprising to me. But when I went back and watched it, the way the Eagles did it was not that surprising, actually. When you see what they did, you're like, oh, that makes sense. That's how you beat the Broncos.
Yeah.
They just did the things that are how you beat the Broncos. They threw screens over the middle of their running backs.
Mm-hmm.
They used their tight end deep down the field. And the Broncos had a bunch of penalties. The referees kind of called it a ticky-tack game, and there were a few drives that got extended. The Broncos are physical cornerbacks, and they're running press man. And they had more than one drive that got extended by some ticky-tack, stupid holding penalty and stuff like this. So, when I went through and watched the game, it was like, okay, all of these things make sense. This is how, if I wanted to design a way to beat the Broncos, this is how I would do it. And that's what they did. So, good on them for like adjusting their game plan. And they really do have one of these offenses that is, because they don't have any skill players other than maybe Ertz, who is like the guy. They are kind of a malleable offense that can kind of adjust and do what they need to do. So they look good. They were impressive. They attacked the middle of the Broncos defense, which is the place to attack them. Brock looked better than he did on the Broncos side. He looked better than he did with the Texans last year. But man, he's not good. He's slow. His windup is slow. He misses open receivers. He throws late consistently. And when you're throwing late consistently and missing open receivers, you're going to throw interceptions and get people in trouble, and that's what he did. So
you're speaking of Brock Osweiler?
Brock, yeah.
Well,
he definitely looked more comfortable and better than he did with the Texans last year, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that they know what his limitations are and tried to work around them. And it worked for Demaryius Thomas. He had a good day. He had a really good day, and I think going forward, I'm not going to be excited about it. I don't think Demaryius gets downgraded any from being with Brock. I think he's going to stay around the same level that he was at before, which is to say,
which is
five
incredible.
Five catches, 50 to 80 yards, and this was his first touchdown that he had all year. But I don't see him changing. I don't think he's going to do this every week, but I don't see him changing that much going forward.
Yeah.
The thing that's the biggest mess from this game, well, both of these running back committees from the Broncos Eagles games are just a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm much more invested in the Eagles at this point moving forward, and just interested in that one. Period. I wasn't particularly impressed by the way that Ajayi played, but I think that one shows me more promise than the Broncos side. And I also just think that LeGarrette Blount will continue to run some, but I think he's just going to get relegated further and further down the line. And I think that they're going to wind up going with Ajayi because this team does not need to rely on its run game and Ajayi to carry the load like he needed to in Miami. And so I think that he's going to be more successful here. He'll learn more. You got to remember, this was in a 3-day turnaround. It was pretty impressive, actually. I mean, he basically turned around, played right after going to a new system. I mean, that's pretty impressive to me. And even though the day wasn't amazing, he scored more touchdowns this week than he did all previous season. So, the couple of things that stood out to me in this game were, number one, yes, Brock Osweiler was not as bad as he was last year with the Texans, but we have to take away a couple of things. We've been saying this all year. Bill O'Brien doesn't get out of his own way, right? It's a tough scheme. He obviously doesn't do anything to really help people flourish in his system. He's done a better job this year of letting Watson just kind of do his thing, but Brock Osweiler really struggled last year. He's obviously not good at throwing option routes and stuff like that, so it also helps when you do have a talented receiving core as well. He had DeAndre Hopkins last year, but he has two talented receivers this year. So, Demaryius Thomas probably won't get downgraded too severely, but it still is a downgrade to me. I'm still downgrading him a bit compared to where he was. If it returns better dividends, then so be it. But I'm still kind of scared of what Brock brings. Like he really can implode your team on any week. And then it's funny that you bring up the physicality of this game, the way that the Broncos play, as far as their corners are concerned. Two teams have been doing this for the past several seasons, the Seahawks and the Broncos. And it was funny, the Seahawks got Ron Torbert as their referee crew this week, and the Broncos got Gene Steratore as their referee crew this week, both of whom just notoriously call tighter games. They're good referee crews. Both of them are good referee crews, but they call tighter games than usual, and the Seahawks have been getting away with this for a really, really, really long time. They nudge you until you break, and they commit a lot of penalties, and they just kind of get away with a lot of penalties too, right? They both got called out this week. I think the Seahawks had 13 penalties for like 138 yards this week, and the Broncos had some ungodly number of penalties as well. And like you said, they came at bad times too, right? Where they just kept getting extended. They extended the series, the drives and stuff like that, and it was just one. At some point, you break, right? Your defense can only hold so well before you break if you keep giving up penalties like that. So, I thought that was an interesting takeaway from this game as well, is that not only was their defense, it just hasn't been playing as well as it usually does, the Eagles also had a game plan to beat them, and they shot themselves in the foot. And when you do all of those things, it's tough to win in the NFL. It's really, really tough to win. And the scoreboard showed it, man. The Eagles just keep on running like a well-oiled machine. And you just got to be impressed with Carson Wentz this year. Like he's obviously, I mean, such a huge improvement from year one to year two. Wentz and Goff, really, because we're going to talk about the Rams as well this week. Wentz and Goff have just made incredible improvements, both. Like it's
the
just
throw that Carson Wentz made on his touchdown pass to Alshon Jeffrey was
yeah, it was.
I mean, he had a defender in his face. He picks his head up from the read option. There's a defender right in his face, and he just looks up on his bad foot and just throws a dime over the top. It was incredible.
It was reminiscent to me a couple of weeks ago when he made a throw. He had just thrown an interception. I forgot who they were playing precisely, but he had just thrown an interception, right? And he comes back literally on the next play, or the next play that he was in, and he ducked off a defender, like stayed on his feet by some miracle, and then just threw an absolute dime to the side of the end zone where only his receiver could catch it, and sure enough, receiver makes a great catch. And it's just like, you see these things and you're saying to yourself, like, man, this guy can be a franchise quarterback. These are the kind of things that I want to see, that tells me he can make every throw in the book, that says he has good mental fortitude, that says he has good toughness, and that says he can make every throw, right? That's what I want my quarterback to go out there every single week and give me the opportunity to win. And when I go out there and I see see him make throws like that, it just puts a smile on my face. Like, not only because for us as fantasy owners, like, we know that we can trust that guy, right? Even if he does have a bad pick or something like that, we know that he's not just going to shut down and have 3 more. He's got that good mental fortitude that makes me think that he's going to be a positive from start to finish, right? He's going to play 60 minutes of good football.
Yeah, definitely. So that was it was good. I mean, it was good to see that. Well, it tells you one thing: don't ever bench any your Eagle guys, right? Ertz and Wentz especially, they're matchup proof. If you can do that to the Broncos, you're matchup proof.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's get into it a little bit deeper. Once again, we're going to go through everything game by game. I just wanted to get your takeaway on that one. I thought that was definitely an interesting score line from the week. I mean, you don't see, especially 2 50-plus point games. You don't see that very often in the NFL. There were a lot of points scored this weekend by some high-powered offenses. So let's go through it game by game, and we'll also talk about DFS a little bit this week. You and I were talking about off stream. There's a couple of really good positional spots that we're in for DFS this week. There's a couple of tough ones. There's a couple of things, especially tight end with how bad the position's been the entire year. When you get constraints put on you even further, it gets really, really tough. So that's going to be a position that we're going to talk about a lot this week. Maybe give some people some interesting plays, some cheap plays this week. Let's go through it game by game this week, Joe. The tomorrow game, the Thursday night game, is going to be the Seahawks-Cardinals. We don't really play this one heavily from a DFS perspective, but we do have people playing, obviously, from a season-long redraft perspective. Who do you like most in this game, and what do you expect to come out of this game? It's a divisional matchup, again, as usual, for a Thursday night game. What are you thinking?
I don't like this game. That's what I'm thinking. The Seahawks, it's Russell Wilson and Jimmy Graham are the 2 guys, and Doug Baldwin, right? Those are they're really the guys that they kind of center around.
Right.
I don't, Doug Baldwin, you can play him in this game, and I think he'll probably have a good game. I think he lines up in the slot enough that I don't think Patrick Peterson's going to shut him down. He might, but I don't think he's going to. Jimmy Graham is a fine play, but it's just a Seahawks team. You don't know which team you're going to get. Like last week, 2 weeks ago, they just went nuts and had a phenomenal scoring week, and last week they didn't do anything, right? They really struggled. It's all on Russell Wilson. It's just if he's going to be the best player on the field, then they're going to have a good offensive week, and if he's not, then they're going to really struggle. They don't block for him, so they don't run the ball. So it's just snap it to him and hope that he can run around until somebody gets open. That's their game plan.
Yeah. I haven't said this in a couple of fantasy seasons, but the Seahawks are one of the only teams that's like, I'm not going to crucify you if you do this, right? If you want to go ahead and play them, be my guest. There will be some weeks where they really blow up, but I am officially just avoiding the Seahawks for the rest of the season. I'm just because it really does. It all completely goes by whether Russell Wilson decides to just man mode or not, and it doesn't matter whether it's a good defense or not. The defense doesn't matter on the other side of the field, right? We're not putting up numbers against good matchups and then shitting the bed against bad matchups. We're just completely deciding whether Russell Wilson wants to run a lot this game and chuck it downfield, or if he wants to not run a lot this game and just kind of sit back and hopefully their defense kind of wins it for him. The defense is still not as good as seasons past, but they're still a solid team. I mean, they can still win the week. Also, Jimmy Graham got tackled really wonky last week, and even though he's cleared to play in this game, I'm worried about that injury. We've seen the way that he plays injured in the past, and he's tough. Like, he'll play it out and stuff, but it clearly makes a difference to him, whether he feels injured or not. So, I'm just staying away from that team probably altogether. And then from the Cardinals side of the ball, it's.
I mean, they ran Adrian Peterson 100 times last week.
Yeah, he's. I mean, you got to give it up to him. That guy is a freak of nature. Like, how you run the ball 37 times. Actually, this will be the test this week to see if he can bounce back and see how well he plays this week on how many carries. Yeah, exactly. On a short turnaround, like this guy is just an absolute freak of nature. I wouldn't sit him probably if I'm in a season-long league. You got to roll him out there. If you picked him up and you're playing him, you probably don't have many other options either. So especially if you're in like a standard league, I don't know that you're going to get much better shot at 25 plus carries, 100 plus yards, and potentially an end zone look. Right? I mean, how many other people are you considering in the league from a standard scoring perspective is going to get you that many touches with a potential for that many yardage and a potential score? Are there many?
Yeah, I mean the volume definitely is very attractive, right? There's if he's on your team, you probably should play him at worst in a flex, but he's probably better than that for most people.
I mean, he's an RB2 to me at the absolute worst in a standard league.
For most players, and in most situations, I would be a little worried because he had a huge workload and now they're playing on a Thursday. But Bruce Arians is just the kind of asshole to give another 35 carries this year. I mean, right, this guy just doesn't care.
No, he really doesn't. I mean, he doesn't, and that's what Adrian Peterson wants. So I guess it's okay, right? Like that's what he's openly expressed that is good for him, is good for his game type. And if he dies on the football field, then so be it. He'll die on the football field. It's just the way that he is. I mean, he's just an old style, wants to pound the rock 100 times a game if you're going to give him the rock, and he'll do it. You know, he's going to line up and keep saying, all right, coach, what do you want me to do? So I'm not telling you to sit him. I think it's not a bad idea, but I don't really like this game a ton either. I think this is going to be a pretty defensive, a pretty low-scoring defensive divisional grudge match. I think the Seahawks will win. I can't imagine that they don't, but I just think it's not going to be a very appealing game. The next game on the slate, though, the Sunday game, is my game of the week, Joe. We're coming out hot with the discount plays this week. It's Jets Buccaneers, dude. I'm all over this game. I know that it seems a little counterintuitive when I say these things that I'm about to follow up with, but for some reason this game feels like the one for me, right? It feels like the game where you can get some great plays, especially in the running back department, even some sneaky wide receiver plays and not the usual guys. Mike Evans is suspended in this game, so we're going to see a lot of Deshaun Jackson, probably going to see some Adam Humphries too. I'm thinking we're also going to see a lot of a mix of Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard. I think O.J. Howard is going to get pretty involved in this game. He's obviously one of their best receiving threats, and when you get backup quarterbacks, you get more checkdowns. That's just the way that it goes, right? That's just the way that it is. This will also be a historic meeting, Joe. The last time that Fitzpatrick and McCown met, they were two quarterbacks who had played on the most teams ever at 13 apiece. They're meeting again, 15 apiece, baby. History is being made this Sunday. They've played for half the teams in the NFL. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. It's
more teams and seasons in the league. It doesn't make
it's unbelievable. Like you were saying earlier today, a couple of seasons ago, Josh McCown was like a first grade teacher going into the season.
Yeah, like the first week of the season, he was teaching middle school. By week 9, he held every Bears single game record that there was. What's going on with this guy?
Kill me, dude. How does that even happen? So anyway,
how are there still Bears fans after that guy's your record holder?
Dude, it's bad. It's bad. So McCown Fitzpatrick this week, I think that both QBs are honestly viable in this game. I advocate much more for McCown than I do for Fitzpatrick, but I think that both are viable this week. I think that Doug Martin should have a better showing this week. I don't know, for some reason when they were losing last week, maybe it was to send a message like you were telling me earlier, but Doug Martin just didn't even see more than, I think he saw like 2 snaps in the second half. I don't think he saw a carry at all when they were losing to the Saints. Now, they were losing this game. They did need to pass. It got chippy. They were really out of it. They looked defeated. Jameis got hurt. There were a lot of factors that went into this game and how that decision was probably made. But I don't know if Cutter is maybe trying to save him, because they're just kind of giving up. But I think I have to believe that they'll put him out to start the game and that this game will be closer than last week, at least a little bit, and they should be trying to run the ball a little bit better. Are you afraid to play Doug Martin this week? Are you willing to roll him out there? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a season long, you know a better option.
Yeah,
right?
you have to. Right, especially since he was one of those that you took later on, and you took a chance on him, and you were probably hoping for him to come through, and you maybe took some other people earlier on. This is probably a position that you've put yourself in.
I think there is a risk with him, right? There's always a risk with him and running backs like him, which is to say running backs who don't play much on passing downs.
Right.
Because if the game flow goes against them, then they just don't play. And that's always a risk with him. I think this is a time when the risk is worth the reward here. The Jets are much better than people give them credit for, and they have a reasonably good chance of winning this game, I think.
Yeah. I think they will win this game. You don't think they'll win this game?
I don't. No, I do, but I don't
Okay.
think they're gonna. I don't see them blowing out the Bucs. I don't see them winning by 20 points at halftime like the Saints are doing.
No,
So-
nothing like that.
So I think that keeps Doug Martin engaged and involved. And, I think with the volume that we think he should get and that he was getting before this week. Now, to be clear, he hasn't been effective or efficient with any of the volume, but he's been getting it. And with Fitzpatrick in instead of Winston, it's not like they're going to want to chuck it around. So I see him trying to run it. I think he's worth the reward. I wouldn't fire him up every opportunity I got, but in DFS, I'd put him in a couple of lineups. I think he's at a good price there.
Now, the person on the other side of the ball to talk about this week that's just uber cheap, like I can't even wait to get to the DFS portion to talk about him, is Matt Forte is like $4,600 or some nonsense like that.
Crazy.
I think he
4,400.
He's 4,400. Not only I'm not really looking at points scored last week. I'm just looking at immense volume that we're getting, and plus the PPR added value to it, and just cheap running backs are tough to find, right? Cheap running backs with that much volume are tough to find, and it's not like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing any semblance of good defense right now.
I mean, did you see what Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram did to him last week?
Both of them sliced them up. Now the Saints are really good at executing this game plan, right? Let's give credit where it's due. The Saints are very good at executing this game plan, but the Jets are not completely foreign to running this BS screens to your running backs all day. I mean, that's how Bilal Powell made literally his season last year. Right,
guys. The Jets' offensive coordinator was in the Saints system for a long time.
Yeah,
he was the wide receivers coach.
And right? I mean, Matt Forte is one of the best receiving backs of our generation, right? I mean, it's not like he's any foreign to this
right.
at all either. So, I think that this is a recipe for success. I think Matt Forte could be our cash game play and our GPP play all over this week. Like, I just think he's too good to pass up for that perspective. Now, he'll probably be heavily owned just because he has scored well. I mean,
last week, yeah.
Absolutely. And amongst the people that are down there in the bottom dwellers as far as costs are concerned, he's been one of the higher scorers the entire season when he's been active. So I do think that he'll be pretty solid owned, but I think it's too good of points relative to dollars to pass up. So I think he's a pretty good option. Are you looking to play anybody else from the Jets side? The wide receiver carousel is kind of tough, but
I kind of like their wide receivers this week.
Mm-hmm.
I think both of them are reasonably priced. I don't play both of them.
Yeah.
But I think either of them is a fair play.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair too.
The Bucs secondary is not very good. Ted Ginn got behind him a couple of times last week. So Robbie Anderson's a good bet to do that once or twice. You have to count on him making the catch and McCown making a good throw, but it seems like they've been able to do that. So I think Robbie Anderson's a good play. And then I think if they get in the red zone area, I think, Jermaine Kearse has shown that he's pretty reliable down there. And McCown kind of likes throwing to him. So I think either of those guys is a good bet. I would do Robbie Anderson because I think that it seems that he's emerging a little bit more as the season goes on. And it seems that the Bucs are able to get beat deep. At least it sure looked that way last week. So he'd be the one that I would lean toward.
Yeah, I think it also lends itself to a little bit of a mix of like most talented and also which the quarterback likes to throw to the most, right? He's favored and he's probably the most talented of the group. He and Jermaine Kearse are maybe even. They just kind of do different things. But when you put that mix of all of those things that you said together, plus being favored by the quarterback, I think that's probably the guy that I'm looking towards this week. I wouldn't advocate for playing Josh McCown all over in DFS this week because he's a little bit more expensive than I would maybe like him to be, but I do think that it's a very viable stack if you want to go Josh McCown, Matt Forte, and Robbie Anderson. I don't usually advocate the stack for quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, typically because they wind up taking some away from one another. But because Forte is intertwined so well into the passing game, and I think that this game plan is gonna call for that. I think that they could be a really, really good stack this week to play in your GPPs, your tournament lineups. I think they could be a great 3-play because Matt Forte's cheapness makes up for Josh McCown being a little overpriced, right? So I think that's a very viable stack, and you can still get some high-priced offensive weapons into your lineups, or some guys around the $7 to $7,500, $6,500 to $7,500 range that you maybe wouldn't otherwise be able to with some other more expensive stacks like Dak Prescott and stuff like that, who I think is a little overpriced this week. So this is a really, really good discount game, guys. That's why we're spending so much time talking about it. It's a good discount game this week that could produce some offensive firepower. So that's definitely something to take into consideration. Who thought that at the beginning of the season we were going to have the Jets talked about in an offensive firepower game this season, huh?
I don't understand. This is the weirdest season.
It really is a strange season. So going from an offensive firepower game to literally could be the other side of the game, which is another anomaly that we would have been talking about this season, is Saints-Bills. Could be, I mean, this is going to be Joe, you're attending this game, are you not?
I will be attending this game, yeah.
I believe you're going to be a cold, wet, unpleasant fan until hopefully our team wins. But what do you expect defensively out of this game?
I mean, I just can't see a lot of scoring happening in this game unless there's some, BS like fumbles returned for touchdowns or wet ball stuff. But it's going to be wet. It's going to be cold. It's supposed to be, raining in the afternoon and in the upper 30s, low 40s. Just it's going to be a slog, right? I mean, it's the outdoor stadium. The Bills want it to be that way.
Yeah,
the Saints have shown that they are happy to play that way this year.
It would appear so, right? The team that we were used to passing all over for 5,000 yards every single season looks like they want to opt into games where they can run the ball and play defense, right? In seasons, in any season before this, maybe until the 90s, right, of the Saints where they had the Dome Patrol, I would have said that this is a terrible game for the Saints, that this is one that is just an awful environment. It's outside. There's no chance. Breeze is bad on the road. All those things. I would have fed into that narrative, significantly. But with the way that this team has looked like they're opting to play ball, it looks like this game could be almost in their wheelhouse too. It's not home field advantage, so it's never going to be as good as it was if it was in the Dome. But it looks like this is willing to be a slugfest, and I think there's going to be a lot of running the ball and a lot of defense in this game. I mean,
yeah. So as far as that goes, I think the running backs are the guys to play, all three of them. So
all three.
Kamara, Ingram, and McCoy, they're all good plays this week. I think all of them are going to be approaching 20 touches, all three of them.
Joe, do me this. Do me this. Rank from first to third how you would want to play those running backs. Give me your order of ranking how you want to play them.
I think that I would do McCoy first because he's going to get the most volume of any of them, and we talked about this a little bit before the show, and the Saints' rush defense has been very good this year all together, but they've been vulnerable to the big run, and that's really what McCoy has made his career out of. He's good at everything, but he's a specialist at the big run, and he's good at catching out of the backfield, and those are the two things that the Saints' defense is probably weakest about.
Right. Yeah, so if they are going to get burned, that's the way that they're going to get burned. And Shady is excellent in that. In that phase of his game, he's just literally made a career off of breaking people's ankles. And when there's space, he absolutely chews it up. I mean, he's an electric playmaker. He's really good. I have to rank Shady first as well because not only is he probably the best playmaker on the field and of this crew, Kamara might be later on in his career, but we don't quite know what he is yet. He's still a rookie. Shady is just an electric guy. So not only is he the best playmaker, but he should get the majority of the carries in the Bills' offense, whereas these two in the Saints' offense, even though it's a great split, it is still a split, right? And then I have to rank Mark probably third just because of the way that Kamara is getting played. And dude, I got to give it to you. He's one of those people where we played him last week, and it's like I'm not going to sit him at any point going forward. He's Le'Veon Bell light. I mean, he's getting all kinds of touches both in the rushing game and the passing game. And the kid has incredible balance. He has unbelievable balance. Every single week I watch his feet, and I'm like, this kid needs to go down, and he just refuses to. He has unbelievable balance, and he just makes things happen, right? You always think it's 2 yards and he turns it into 6 yards. It's 16 yards and he turns it into 30 yards. It's down at the 4 and he winds up getting in the end zone. And the Saints have fed him around the end zone as well in the red zone. So I have to give it to him probably just for the opportunity that he gets and the way that he fits in meshes just perfectly with the Saints' entire offense. So I'm going to rank him McCoy, Kamara, Ingram. Are you going to rank him the same way?
I think so. I think Ingram's going to have a better game. You know, it's been trending Kamara recently, the last 2 games or so, which makes me think it's going to be an Ingram game.
Just the time to switch it up.
Yeah, and on top of that, the change of direction, the wet and the cold in the field, the change of direction stuff is going to be tougher, and it just feels like this is a smash mouth game. So I think that he's going to fade a little. I don't think he'll do as well as he did last week. Obviously, that's not necessarily reproducible, but I think he's going to. I'd actually might put Mark a little ahead of him or make him close. And I know that sounds weird because of how it's been going, but it just feels like a smash mouth game to me.
I mean, look, if everything was what was based on last week, fantasy would be really easy, wouldn't it? Like, the reason that we get on here and we talk about these things and we make these calls is so that we can go against the grain and give people the play that people are not expecting so that they can win their week. That's why we do this. So I love the fact that you'll go Ingram 2 over 3. I'll tell you the only reason that I'm not. You mentioned the wet game, and also the Saints line is not to the point where it's decimated, I'm willing to call it quite yet, but it's getting there. And if you have to go up the middle every single play, the lack of the beef on the line and the backups playing is something that worries me a little bit for Mark. Kamara can get outside, and while he doesn't need to, while he will be less able to make quick movements and juke plays with the sloppiness and stuff like that, he's shown me that he has good feet and he can get outside and still get up the field. So that's why I'm still going to stick with Alvin Kamara as number 2, but I think all 3 of these running backs have a really good day. I'm not willing to play anyone in either of these passing games. The Bills, I think, rank first overall in passing defense, if I'm not mistaken, especially in fantasy points because they've only given up 1 touchdown in the season, or 2 maybe. Their rush defense is okay. It's not great, but it's still good. Right, but the passing defenses for each of these teams, I am not willing to touch with a 10-foot pole. I wouldn't touch them with your money, right? I wouldn't touch it with my money. I wouldn't touch them with your money. That's how willing I am to stay away from both of these passing offenses.
Yeah, you know, let's be clear. For season-long leagues, you're playing Drew if you have him. You don't have another option. You're not picking up one to play him this week.
Yeah. So
play Drew. That's fine. But he's the second most expensive quarterback on DraftKings, and we just don't see him returning that value.
There's no, I don't see it. Yeah, it'd be very, very. They would have to be losing very, very big time, and then he would still have to make excellent decisions for the rest of the time that he was playing. It's just tough. It's tough.
All right, next one, Browns Lions. You know, they're playing inside, so we don't have to worry too much about the weather here. The Browns, the week before their bye, they ran the ball pretty well, and they got Kroll involved in the passing game. So one might think that he's back to being kind of usable. They're coming off the bye, so who knows what craziness they concocted over the bye week. But is Kroll back on the playlist?
That's a trick question, Joe, and I like it. I like the question, and you know, running back has become really thin over the course of the season. So if you absolutely have to play him, I'm at the point where I don't think that I will absolutely criticize you for playing him if you feel like you have to. Right? There's a lot of better options, but a lot of his rushing total came on one play. Right, and that's why I'm worried about. Now, it's good to see that happen, right? He still got the yards, and he actually did something. He made any semblance of a play, which he hadn't done for the previous, total of the season. I think the Browns have stabilized a little bit, but this Lions defense is pretty good. The most excited thing that I am in this game is that the Browns let us play a tight end again. Woohoo!
Yes.
Woohoo! And Joe, to me, it's not Eric Ebron. It's just not anymore. They can see it. The writing is on the wall. It's not Eric Ebron to me. So let me ask you this. At a whopping, what is it? $2,500? At a whopping $2,500, how excited are you to play Darren Fells this week against the Browns?
I mean, I think he's the guy, the tight end who gets a free touchdown against the Browns.
That's what I was going to say. He's the free touchdown guy, right? At the minimum, he's the free touchdown guy.
They've just shown that they don't cover the tight ends, and they've shown it consistently. And Darren Fells he has a few fewer catches than Ebron, not too many. He has 2 more touchdowns than Ebron does this year. to use him in the red zone. And he's the one that, I mean, Ebron's a receiver at this point, right? He doesn't really line up on blocking plays, doesn't block very much. He's really just kind of like a slot receiver who's not very good. It seems like it's Darren Fells to me, and he's super cheap. The thing is that he's not going to get a ton of catches. So if he doesn't get the touchdown, then you don't get, you're not going to return value out of him probably. But it's just the Browns are so likely to not cover the tight end. It just seems like a good bet.
Yeah, to me, I think you actually said it best, and maybe I hadn't thought about it this way before, but Eric Ebron has basically become a wide receiver at this point because he's not in on blocking plays. He lines up in the slot a whole lot. And now that they have Galladay, they have 3 bona fide receiving options that are all better than Ebron. So what's the point in having him run a route that's wasted from somebody else, right? He's taking those routes from somebody else. That's the other thing that I was going to bring up is that in the red zone, you could see Kenny Galladay scoring some of these touchdowns, right? You could see Marvin Jones getting some of these looks.
Jones went great, went nuts last week.
Well, he's done that against Green Bay every single time. I literally don't even count those games. If you see Green Bay on the schedule, which you're going to twice a year, doesn't matter if it's home, doesn't matter if it's away, fire up the Jones, bro. That's the way that it goes. Fire up Marvin Jones because he just eats them alive every single week. I don't know if he pisses in all their Wheaties in the morning of the game or something like that, but he finds a way to always get it done consistently against the Green Bay Packers. So I almost count that as a statistical anomaly to the top, right? But you could see those two guys taking away some of these some of these red zone options from Darren Fells, but I still like the way that they operate, and I trust in Jim Bob Cooter to get the right guy in the red zone, and Stafford knows that he can count on Fells in the red zone. So those are the kind, and just they're not idiots. The Browns don't cover the tight end ever at all. So he's the free tight end guy this week, and he's only 2,500 on DraftKings. I would play him up, and if you really do need a streaming option with Ertz out, with Kelsey out, with Graham being a Thursday night game, I'm not afraid to stream Darren Fells this week either.
Yeah, definitely not. And you made one comment that, and we talked a little bit about this before, but it leads me into this. I think Stafford is a really good value option in drafting this week. I think he's the 3rd or 4th most expensive quarterback. But here's the argument for Stafford. Like, how many touchdowns do you think the Lions are going to score against the Browns this week?
Total or just passing?
They're the same, but total.
Okay, that's really true. I'm an idiot. Sorry. Total, I could see this game being no less than 3, probably somewhere in the 4 or 5 range.
You're not going to run any of those in, so that's how many touchdowns Stafford's going to get.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So
I think it's at least 3.
It's hard to see him getting less than 3.
I think it's at least 3. It's got to be.
So I think Stafford's a really good play this week, just because the Lions, talked about it before, they just don't run it in. They like to throw it in for whatever reason. That's what they like to do, and they're going to score some points on the Browns. It may not be 5 touchdowns, but they're going to get at least 21. The Browns are too bad not to.
Yeah.
So, I think Stafford's a good play.
Also, just for the record, I think that the Lions' defense is a good play here too. I just think that the revolving door at quarterback and the difficulties that they've struggled, and then I think is Joe Thomas still out? Didn't he? Yeah, he's out for the rest of the year, I think. Yeah, so that just makes it tougher. I think they have some decent O-line depth, but that just makes it tougher for the rest of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if you see these guys actually pack it in pretty soon. So I would play the Lions' defense here too. Next game is Bengals-Titans. This game actually has some sneaky good potential as well. The Titans are getting back on track. They're still not where I would like to see them really at all yet, but I think that Andy Dalton might be one of the best quarterback plays of the entire DFS world this week, just because the Titans secondary is so bad. You have to think that they're really regretting the decision of taking a wide receiver over somebody on the defensive side of the ball this year.
Yeah, I mean, considering that the defensive side of the ball option is Marshall Lattimore, who's been nothing short of incredible this season.
Yeah,
I think everybody who didn't draft him is probably regretting it. I think this is the first and potentially the last time we'll say this all season. We think Andy Dalton's a good play this week.
Yeah.
The Titans are bad. AJ Green didn't get suspended.
Yep.
Or the Titans are bad on defense. AJ Green didn't get suspended. So it feels like this is a good chance for Andy to have a good game here.
Yeah, I also just trust Tyler Kroft at this point, right? The Cincinnati Bengals have shown me time and time again that their tight end is a great option no matter especially in the red zone, right? Which, when we're picking out tight ends, especially to play for the week, I want touchdowns. We need touchdowns out of our tight ends, unless you're Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is and Kelsey sometimes, really. Those are the only two guys that can get away with, the 7 for 100 stat line and still come out better than some of the tight ends scoring touchdowns. But, man, they just target them so heavily. The Cincinnati Bengals do to their tight ends, target them so heavily in the red zone, and that's something that has a lot of value to me. Even if it doesn't work out every single week, I'm still willing to roll that out there because they're going to be part of the millionaire lineup when they do hit, right? I mean, you're talking, and he had yards last week too. He had 76 yards last week. I mean, he had some pretty impressive yards after catch. I mean, he ate up space well. He's playing well in the blocking game. I gotta say I'm impressed with Tyler Kroft. I wouldn't be surprised if they move on past Tyler Eifert this year because he's so injured, and Tyler Kroft has just been playing well. He's too hurt. So with those two bona fide receiving options that Dalton has, and the Titans just being absolute garbage on defense. I mean, they are true fantasy gold for offenses to play against. I really do. I love Andy Dalton. He's 5,300 this week, I think, on DraftKings. He's just got an excellent matchup. I think he could return 2.5, 3 times value easily this week.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise to see him score 20 fantasy points. It's not out of the question here.
Yeah, at least.
So, I fire up Andy Dalton. On the Titans side, the Bengals played pretty good defense.
They do.
And the Titans receiving group, at least for now, is getting a little messy. Right, Corey Davis is back, but he's not really back. He ran the most pass routes of anybody on the Titans last week, but he only ran 26. So they've got these 3 guys. Decker is obviously the third of the 3. Rashard Matthews and Corey Davis are the other 2. And then also Delaney Walker, if he's healthy, takes away targets. So
yeah, he practiced. I don't think he practiced today, which kind of worries me a bit. And if he doesn't get a full practice in by Friday, I'm probably not going to trust Delaney Walker going in this weekend. But the other guys, obviously.
Yeah, I think Corey Davis is a good stash. I think it's probably still a week too early.
Especially against this defense specifically, right? This has been a good pass defense, and they have 2 corners specifically that can cover very well. And if Delaney Walker isn't in this game, I don't trust them to be able to really create separation consistently against a good pass defense in the Bengals. Rashard Matthews, to me, is also still just the trusted guy by Mariota, right? He's the lock-in guy. He's just the way Mariota loves him. And so I agree that I think Corey Davis is a good stash guy, but at this point, I think I'm on to trusting him next year. I think it's a next year thing for Corey Davis to me. What about the running backs? Are you willing to stick your neck out for either Titans running back?
No, never. I haven't been able to do that all season.
Yeah, that's true. You were pretty anti DeMarco Murray because of the way that things were potentially going down.
It's really kind of come to pass in a lot of ways. He hasn't gotten the job taken from him, but
the writing's on the wall
enough away that it renders him not really that great, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm probably not sticking my neck out, especially this week either. I do think that DeMarco Murray, if I'm not mistaken, has gotten much cheaper on DraftKings, but still, yeah, they're actually equal at 5,000, so it's a pick'em. It's a you get it right, you win the money type of deal. But even so, even when one of them really has a big day, it's not a big day. It's not what we've been used to from the Titans, right? It hasn't been that line up and smash mouth offense that we were used to seeing last year. And I just think that it's due to a lot of different things, but Mariota still being a little ailed and their offensive line just not playing as well. I think that it's just, and their defense really puts them in a bad situation every single week. Yeah, so I'm probably not willing to play too many people on the side of the Titans. I'm more looking at the Bengals side this week, and I think that's another one. Another good stack option is a cheap Andy Dalton, an appropriately priced AJ Green, and a little bit overpriced Tyler Kroft. But this could be a lineup that really gives you some good return on investment.
Definitely. So next game is Packers-Bears. The Packers side, Brett Hundley is really struggling. We saw that last week. It's hard to play anybody, isn't it?
Yeah, I just don't want it. I mean, Cobb, maybe. Cobb is the only person that I'm even remotely willing to try and play if you're talking about passing attack. But that's really it. I don't play that with confidence either.
you think the Packers want to run the ball, and maybe they do, but it looks like that backfield is a total mess at this point too. So,
Yeah.
I'm just staying away.
I think their line is just really hurt too, right? Like I don't want any part of that. You know what I'm saying? It's just everything is trending downward for them, and if I were them, I would just take the year off and just wait until Aaron Rodgers gets back. Like everything, don't injure anybody worse off, right? Don't make your contract situations any worse off. I mean, just let it go. It's okay. You're not even if they were fully healthy, if they got Aaron Rodgers back today with the way that the rest of their team stands, they would still be in a tough spot to win the NFC North.
Oh, and then also just a side note, anybody who isn't paying attention, Martellus Bennett isn't on the Packers anymore.
Yeah,
so
he was
don't
cut.
play him, cut him or don't play him in DFS.
Right.
On the Bears side, the answer is what the answer always is: play Jordan Howard, and the Bears are playing a bad team, so play the Bears defense.
Right.
That's it. Don't play anybody else in there.
Yep. Fire the Bears defense back up this week. I think you see a solid game out of the Bears.
So that was quick and easy to talk about.
Easy, baby.
Chargers Jags. This is another one that I don't think should be that much to talk about here. Right? The Jags defense is phenomenal, so it's tough to fire up any of your Chargers receivers. And Melvin Gordon is a great play. The Chargers know what I know and what you know, which is that the Jags defense is really good, but they can be run on. So the Chargers are going to run the ball 25 times in this game. On the other side of the ball, the Jaguars know what you and I both know, which is that Blake Bortles is not an NFL quarterback. So they're going to run the ball 25 times in this game. Play the running backs.
Joe, this feels eerily similar, the Jacksonville Jaguars do, to the last two seasons of Denver Broncos, right? They are the new Denver Broncos. You do not play people that are receiving against them, and you do play people that are running against them as long as they have a decent running game, right? They can be beat by the tight end, but I'm not willing to stick my neck out for either of these tight ends this week specifically. I want to see a few more weeks of how safeties line up against on the Jaguars against their opposing tight ends, because I think that they're going to get better. I have a sneaky suspicion that they're going to get better at this. They just haven't figured it out yet. But this is a team with a new defensive identity, still figuring out how they're going to do, right? So I think that they will improve that over the next couple of weeks. So I'm not keen on playing these tight ends, but that is something to watch in this matchup. Everything else that you said is pretty much prudent. You're not playing anybody from the Jacksonville passing game. You're not playing anybody that going against the Jacksonville passing game. And so I'm playing the running backs all over. I think Melvin Gordon is a great play this week. I think Fournette handled his situation from last week with great class, and I think that he's going to move forward in a positive light. I honestly think it just gave him another week to rest. I think it was pretty good for him. So I think he's going to come out shining this week.
Yeah, totally agree. Vikings, Redskins. The Redskins are the more interesting thing to talk about. We'll talk about the Vikings too, because they have some good plays. The Redskins are more interesting to talk about for me. They still don't have an offensive line, and
it's incredible.
They struggled against Seattle, right? I mean, Kirk Cousins had a really, really impressive drive to win the game at the end. Good for him for doing that.
Kirk Cousins just played with a lot of toughness in this game. He played with a lot of toughness, a lot of maturity in the entire game.
So he was really good on the final drive, but he didn't have a good fantasy day, and that's what we were here to talk about.
Right.
It's not going to get any better this week against the Vikings defense. Their offensive line's still hurt. Jordan Reed's going to come up and limp around, probably get hurt again.
Vernon Davis is your guy. I mean, if you're going to play someone, Vernon Davis is your guy.
He's the real tight end this week. But their offensive line's just too hurt, and they quite frankly, they don't really have any receiving talent.
Vernon Davis is their receiving talent.
Yeah, right. So, I think the only guy, and I'm not playing Kirk Cousins this week. Vernon Davis is really the only guy from the Redskins that I'll play this week. You can play Chris Thompson if you have to.
I will give a word of caution though, specifically to the Redskins. The Minnesota is just such an adaptive defense, which I've used that word a bunch of different times over this entire season. I just think that that's the word that describes them best, is adaptive more than anything else. Chris Thompson didn't have a good week last week against the Seahawks. That's because they have good linebackers, and the Minnesota Vikings also have very good linebackers, and they play good adaptive defense. I don't think that Chris Thompson will be a viable play this week. I really don't. I understand if you have to play him, but I would not look to play him if you have other options. So be wary of that. Just the Vikings play really, really good, solid defense, and just with the way that the Redskins that luck has not been kind to them. Okay, injuries happen; they just happened a lot at once. I would avoid that team this week. That's probably the team that I'm avoiding most this week. What about on the Minnesota Vikings side of the ball? I like Jerick McKinnon this week. I think that he's an excellent play just because he gets so much opportunity.
I like both of the Vikings running backs this week, and it's pretty interesting. So I don't like, let me be clear, I don't like both of them in season long necessarily. Right. But I think that Latavius Murray is at a really good price. He's at $4,000, which is really cheap for a guy he's going to get at least 10 carries.
Yeah.
Like they've shown that he gets at least 10 carries every game.
Yep.
He might get more, but he's going to get at least 10 carries, and for that at that price, that's a good value. And this is actually a pretty okay offense with the defense that's going to put him in good position to score points. So I like Latavius Murray, and then I like McKinnon all the time because he's just got that that extra gear that allows him to take it from long, right? I mean, he's shown that he's able to break. He's the catching guy, plus he's able to break long runs,
right?
When he gets the opportunity. So I like McKinnon in general. On the Vikings receiving side, of course, Diggs is kind of getting back healthy here. And this Redskins team, while they have they played really good defense this year, they've been a little bit vulnerable deep. And that's where Diggs has shined this year. In the past, he's been more of a shorter guy. But Thielen's kind of taking the underneath stuff, and Diggs has been going deeper. So I think that Diggs is a reasonable play.
Yeah,
but I think he's
a fair play too.
Probably a little expensive.
I didn't check the price on Diggs specifically, but I also like Rudolph on this side of the ball as well. He's 4,600. Yeah. The only problem that I kind of hesitate to say that specifically is Stephon Diggs is 6,500, by the way, so it's a little pricey.
It's a little high.
A little pricey. But the only reason that I sort of hesitate to say Rudolph in this one is like, we've recommended everyone on the Minnesota Vikings offense, right? Not everyone is going to get fed. It's like, where does it wind up falling apart, right? So I do think that Thielen is probably going to be a bit shut down. I think he's going to wind up getting shadowed by Norman for a bit of the day. And then I think Diggs will also draw some coverage from Norman as well. So I really do. I think it's going to be the running backs and the tight end in this one more than anything else that wind up being the recipients of some positive game flow.
Yeah, I do too. I think, let me be clear about Diggs. I don't think Thielen's going to have a great game. And with Diggs, I think if he has a good game, it will be a low catch game.
Yeah, it's going to be It's going to be 3 for 2 scores and 70 yards or something like that.
I think he has a chance to
get
behind this defense. They've shown that they're able. That's possible, but they've also shown that they're pretty good. And so I don't think he's going to just go nuts on 10 catches.
Right, definitely.
It could happen. I don't see it.
Yeah. Next game is Steelers Colts. This has been incredible. Joe, I want to give you a quote. Chris Ballard said that he believes Vontae Davis is playing, quote, not that well. If I had told you before the season started that Vontae Davis was not going to play that well for the Colts, how bad do you think the Colts defense would have been in your mind?
Worse than it's been.
Absolutely abysmal, right? How have they been playing at any sort of NFL level at all whatsoever when their best player is not that good and their draft pick is out for the year?
I mean, let me say this about the Colts. As a team and as an organization, they've been not that good. So I don't know
I agree.
Where Chris Ballard's coming from. But, Vontae Davis hurt his groin earlier in the season, and I just don't think he ever got back from that. So they sat him this week, or they're sitting him this week. It doesn't matter. I mean, their defense is, fine, but they're not good. They're just, fine. That being said, the Steelers' offense is still not okay, right?
They're not.
Something is wrong with them. Juju Smith-Schuster came out and had a great game and then got his driver's license, so he's having a good week.
Hey, he got his driver's license this week, dude. A moment for Juju Smith-Schuster. Well done, buddy. Good job. No more bikes getting stolen, all right?
And Mike Tomlin's done a great job, and Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown of holding this whole thing together through all this, bullshit that Martavis Bryant's dragging him through.
Yeah.
I mean, this team really seems to have stayed focused and held it together, but the offense just isn't clicking yet. They had this bye week last week. Maybe they're going to figure it out. That being said, this is a road game. They struggle on the road. They struggle at home this year too, but they always struggle on the road. So for me, this is a Le'Veon Bell and Steelers defense game.
Yeah, I think those are the people that I'm pretty interested in as well. I
And
want to
Antonio
see.
Brown. I mean, always.
Yeah, always Antonio Brown. I want to see if the Steelers get creative in any way to try and stop T.Y. Hilton, because I think the Steelers' defense is pretty good. I mean, they are good. They're not pretty good. They are good. But I want to see if they do anything creative, because T.Y. Hilton is still a playmaker, right? He's still a playmaker, and if you let him, he will make plays. So I'm interested to see if they maybe get sucked into the whole we're a good defense. If we just go out and play regular defense, we'll be fine. But if they let T.Y. Hilton get, 11 catches, some of those are going to be pretty productive. I do think this is the week that the Colts defense just gets blown apart. Like, I think they actually get blown apart this week. I'm not willing to say play Ben because it's Road Ben, and I never trust Road Ben. But, like, the Steelers, if they have to grab the ball out of Ben's hand and then just go do their thing, like, they will find a way to manufacture offense against this Colts offense against the Colts defense. But yeah, I think this is a Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and a Colts and a Steelers defense kind of game too. I have to agree.
I mean, I think you can play all three of them, and it'll be expensive, but you'll have a good game.
Yeah, it will be expensive. But some of those options at running back and even quarterback really give you an option. There's some cheap options at defense this week as well. They give you the option and the ability to maybe stack that game and come away with 50 points between the two of them. I mean, it's probably the Colts are not going to be able to cover Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell is just a wide receiver and a running back in one.
I mean, this is what you do when the Steelers' offense struggles. That's when Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell have their best games.
Yep.
It's when the Steelers' offense is good that other people get involved.
Right.
When the Steelers' offense, when Ben struggles, what he does is he just locks onto those two guys, and it's great for them, and it's bad for the offense.
Not bad for our fantasy day.
Yeah, easier to predict. All right, so next game, Texans-Rams. The Texans' defense has struggled pretty much from the start this season, which was a surprise to me. Obviously, who was advocating them as the number one overall defense this year.
I was advocating them right there in the top 5 with you as well, so I feel just as dumb.
With Tom Savage in and against a pretty good and improving Rams defense, I don't want any part of this Texans. I mean, of course, if you have DeAndre Hopkins, you play him. But I don't want any part of it in DFS.
Joe, I was as big of an advocate for Houston skill position players this year as much as anyone was, right? Mm-hmm. I really stuck my neck out for Lamar Miller and DeAndre Hopkins in various formats across various rounds all over the place. And while Deshaun Watson was in, I profited from it very heavily. I also picked up Will Fuller a couple of weeks ahead of his his return. I also even drafted him in a 20-team league pretty late and was able to get pretty good value for him. Played him all over. I am advocating everyone to sit your Texans players at this point. It just, I don't know what kind of crazy pills Deshaun Watson made Bill O'Brien take, but he's off of the pills now and he's right back to getting in the way of everything possible. So DeAndre Hopkins, I think, had an anomaly of a week last week. Tom Savage just is not good at getting the ball to him. I mean, he's better than obviously the Jacksonville game because Jacksonville's defense is pretty good. But I don't trust any of them, especially not Lamar Miller. Definitely not Will Fuller. DeAndre Hopkins is semi-trustable just because he's so good, but I still don't feel good about it any week, and I'm definitely not paying up for him in any week. So be very, very careful of playing Texans players. And the Rams defense is good. I trust Wade Phillips a lot. I also trust Sean McVay on the other side of the ball, and Jared Goff has just made me eat words, dude. I love it. I mean, it's fine for me. Like, it's great. I love having another fantasy option. But there's been no quarterback with a greater total QBR improvement from last year to this year than Jared Goff. 47 total QBR points. 47. Almost half of the entire scale he's improved. I think he was somewhere in the 20s last year. He's in the high 60s this year. That's very good. It's like third in the league amongst total QBR for all quarterbacks. He's played exceptional. I'm going to keep riding the train until it falls off. I also think this is a Gerald Everett week. Like, I trust the Rams tight ends. I think this is a good Gerald Everett week. He had a couple of passes last week that I thought really should have connected. It would have been a huge day for him. I think this is going to be another one of those where I think that they just take advantage of the Texans defense. Who's the person that you love the most in the Rams offense aside from Todd Gurley? You don't get that easy. It's not that easy.
Robert Woods. When they play at home, he's the guy. I mean, Sammy Watkins is not the guy. Sammy Watkins had one catch last week. He had a good fantasy game. So he had one catch for 6-7 yards and a touchdown. He's not the guy. Robert Woods is the guy. He's the number one guy.
That's because I muted myself. Shut up.
Thanks.
Hey, I said, tell me you weren't rocking the half chub on that deep pass to Sammy Watkins last week.
It was a great pass. It was one catch.
No. I'm not saying that Sammy Watkins did anything. I'm saying the pass was beautiful. The pass from Jared Goff was just molto bene. It's great.
Yeah. No, Goff looks good. He's really good.
Yeah.
But Robert Woods is the guy, I think.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Yeah. And he's getting more work in the red zone, which he was not at all at the beginning of the season. They're trusting him closer and closer outside of the 20s. So that's good. I like to see that as well, especially for a guy who's a little bit undersized. He's not amazing size. He's not just going to go post up in the end zone and just, high point a ball over you or anything like that. And he's made most of his career about being a long ball guy. I'm just glad to see him getting more involved in the offense. And Sean McVay obviously has had a good impact on Robert Woods for over the course of the season. So, I'm playing probably any one of those guys. I'm not scared of playing Sammy Watkins. I'm not going to pay for him in DFS. But if I have him in season long, I'll go ahead and play him. I think that Robert Woods is a great play. I think Todd Gurley is an excellent play. I think Jared Goff is a fine play. And I like Gerald Everett as a sneaky play this week as well. And then the Rams defense, I think, is just a God mode play this week.
Yeah, I mean, the Texans they've had a lot of injuries. It's too bad, but they're dead. Giants-Niners, definitely the worst football game of the week. Can we squeeze any value out of this game?
I think you can squeeze value out of the game simply because now with Pierre Garçon being out, they don't have anybody to really replace the ex-receiver. I don't think Aldrick Robinson is really up to the task. I know I said that last week, but I just don't – after watching the game, I just don't think that he's going to be the guy. I think he's just a speedy dude. So I think that you're going to see more running back work, period. I think this is actually a week, if you're really desperate, you can play Carlos Hyde and Matt Breida. I think you really can. I think it's a viable option to play both of them in 1 week, and I almost never advocate for that. On the Giants side of the ball, Ingram, you could play Evan Ingram. Obviously, that's the side. I think McAdoo is just terrible. He's just so bad. Just the Giants are just awful. They really are. I think it's possible that the 49ers win their first game of the week first game of the season this week.
I think they are going to win the game.
You do? You think they're going to win?
I think the Niners are going to win this week. I do think that there's some value you can squeeze out of the Giants here if it's a bye week and you're struggling, or if you really need some cheap labor. I think Sterling Shepard can be okay. He had a lot of targets last week and he did all right with them. Mm-hmm. In PPR leagues, obviously, has much more value. And I think that I don't see the Niners blowing out the Giants in this game. And it seems that Orleans Darkwa is the guy, so he's going to get some volume. If you need like a bye week guy to pick up and throw in your flex for this week, or you need a really cheap guy to fill out your lineup on DraftKings or something, Darkwa is not a terrible option. The Niners' rush defense isn't good, and it seems that since all their receivers died, the Giants kind of like running the ball now. They're not any good at it, but except for the one game against Denver, but they kind of like doing it. And so when you're at this point in the season, you're just looking for volume. Right. And Darkwa can give you that if you need a bye week fill in. On the Niners side, the guy I kind of like is Marquise Goodwin. Got a lot of targets last week and didn't necessarily make a lot of it, but the Giants aren't as good as the Cardinals at defense, so I think he's got a chance.
Yeah, the Giants aren't as good as the Cardinals on defense, maybe, but Justin Bethel is on the Cardinals, and he's terrible at carting anything along. So I think that the Giants are better at that, especially Landon Collins. Landon Collins is a pretty good safety. So I trust Marquise Goodwin less, but hey, that's what makes the world go around, and he definitely did have the target share to back up the potential workload moving forward. So he could be the guy that makes the most out of the Pierre Garçon ailment, but I think that it's going to be Carlos Hyde. I think that Shanahan is just going to lean on his running backs more than anything else. We also need to watch what quarterback plays this game and what the what kind of what it seems like is going to happen moving forward, right? We want to see when we think Garoppolo is going to come in. We need to hear what the coaches say. We need to listen to the cues that they're giving us throughout this week to see when Garoppolo potentially might play. But I definitely think it's going to be after the bye. Do you think he's going to show up in this game? Over under 5 Garoppolo minutes in this game?
I mean, under. I don't think he plays. I don't see why you'd play him. I mean, they're not doing anything this year. And there's no reason to throw him out there, right? Like, you want to play him.
I wouldn't if I were coach.
You want to play him this year because you want to make sure that he's the guy before you invest in him. That makes sense. Something that they should do.
And not only that,
no reason.
Not only that, if you do think he's salvageable and you just think that you can cheapen his price by potentially making him play on a bad team, that always is a potential option too, right? You're trying to get him.
Yeah, but
you're trying to
use.
No, not this week. I don't think that it's a good idea to play him this week. I also trust Shanahan to make the decision to not play him this week. But there's always the outside chance that there's backlash from the owner or anything like that. I think Lynch is on board with not playing him this week either, so I think he's probably okay. I just hope not to see Garoppolo this week. That's my hope.
He's not playing this week. No chance.
Good. I like it.
Cowboys Falcons. For me, this is the game of the week, and it's the obvious game of the week. So maybe I take the easy way out here. But this is the game of the week. The problem is that we don't have a clue who any of the Cowboys skill position players are going to be.
I know nothing. I know nothing.
Dez and Terrence Williams both took injuries at the end of the game last week. They came back, didn't come back. You know, we're in and out of the game after that. It's unclear. They're both questionable. We're not sure what's going to happen. So pay attention to that. Zeke's got his trial tomorrow. We'll find out maybe something tomorrow, possibly. But we'll find out about this week tomorrow. So, you know, if Zeke's around, play it. He'll be great. He's always great when he plays. But I mean, the big three on the Cowboys, we don't know if they're going to play.
Yeah, I
don't know what to tell you about the Cowboys.
I'm Jon Snow on the Cowboys this week. Like, I just don't. I have no idea. You have to. We can't give you the goods on this when you're going to have to do some research on your own and pay attention to what happens over the next couple of days. The Zeke thing will be huge news. You'll know whether to play him or not. Probably need to pay a little bit closer attention to the whole Des Bryant thing. I do love Dak in this contest. I mean, Dak has just proven that he's going to be a really good fantasy commodity for years to come. He takes care of the ball. At least when he's not throwing to Des Bryant, he takes care of the ball. But he takes care of the ball pretty well as far as fantasy is concerned. He's got a good potential rushing upside, and he's been fine passing throughout the. And they've called good plays for him. I mean, the whole thing all around with the Cowboys has just been positive as far as the Dak experiment is concerned. I think Witten is a pretty good, is a pretty good look this week. Especially if those guys are out. Witten is probably your top target. I wouldn't be surprised if you see 8 to 11 targets for Witten this week. So, if Zeke plays, play him. If he doesn't, Alfred Morris is still going to be your look. Everything that we said last week applies to this week, right? Whatever the first week is that Zeke is out, play Alfred Morris, and then it'll probably move over to Darren McFadden after that. But play Morris if Zeke is out this week. On the Falcons side of the ball, I think Devontae Freeman is too cheap on DraftKings. He's $6,000. I just think he's too cheap. Somebody with that much talent that potentially gets that much work is just too cheap for $6,000. But I think you brought up a pretty good point with how Julio looked last week. I turned a blind eye to this, I guess, and I just didn't maybe looked at too much of the negative and have been a little bit too hard on him this year. But he had a potential for a huge day last week. I mean, he dropped a big touchdown. It was a 40-yarder to win the game last week. And he had 12 targets, only caught 6 of them, but had 118 yards. This day could have been huge. Am I right?
Julio had 100 yards, and then he had 2 plays that were 50-yard touchdowns each that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, there was obviously the fourth down that Matt Ryan hit in the breadbasket and he dropped. Earlier in the game, they ran basically the same play, and Matt Ryan overthrew him by 5 yards. And he was wide open again.
Right.
So I mean, they were that close to having 200 yards and 2 touchdowns and having the best game of the season. So I know you're thinking is, well, if a quarterback could throw and a receiver could catch, they'd be great. But the point is they're looking to utilize Julio Jones, and they're utilizing him in ways that got him open. Which both of those things are new for them this year for some reason. So I think and Dallas doesn't have anybody. Nobody has anybody who can shut him down, but Dallas doesn't have anybody who can stay close to him.
Right.
So, I think this is a good week to play Julio. It seems like they tried to get him more involved this game, and it worked, and they did get him more involved this game. Right, he had 100 yards, and it easily could have been 200 and 2 touchdowns. So
yeah,
I'm not saying he's going to get 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, but I think Julio is getting back on track here.
You have to hope so. I mean, this would be one of the latest in recent memory that I remember Julio Jones getting on track, or even a top receiver in general just starting to get on track. But to fantasy owners, if they can finally make some hay while the sun is shining, it would be great for the sun to start shining. I mean, he is still expensive. He's $8,000 on DraftKings this week. But, I mean, that's a stark $1,500 discount from where you get Antonio Brown. And if you have some upside, potentially with huge yardage numbers and stuff like that, that would be a really good day. I do think that Atlanta will wind up winning this game. I hope that's not the case. But I do think Atlanta will wind up winning this game. And I do think it will require a big day from Julio. I think it's going to require an excellent day from Matt Ryan, but I think it's going to require also a big day from Julio. So hopefully we get some production out of that game. Be careful. Keep track of the Cowboys' skill position players in the rest of the week. The next game is the Sunday night game. It's Patriots-Broncos. Joe, this is going to be a pretty interesting one. The Broncos kind of suck now. I don't want to play any of their skill position players on offense. And I do think Brock will continue to shut them down. But I think that Tom Brady is just going to light this defense up, huh? I mean, with what Wentz did to him last week, I have to assume that him, James White, and Gronkowski will probably just take it to him.
I mean, like, we all saw what the Eagles did to the Broncos, and we talked about it earlier. Belichick saw that too, right? And Josh McDaniels saw that too. And so they're going to put Brady in situations to succeed. The Patriots don't rely. The Patriots are strong where the Broncos are weak, right? Brady's strength is throwing over the middle. Gronk's strength obviously is being over the middle, and James White's strength is catching it short and over the middle. And I think Amendola is a good PPR guy this week.
Yeah.
I think Cooks, and I don't think Hogan's going to play, but Cooks is not good this week.
Cooks is worthless this week. One catch, 13 yards. That's a stat line.
He's going to be a decoy out there on the edge, and they're just going to send him deep and not use him. But I think those guys, the guys who play over the middle, White, Gronk, and Amendola, I think they're going to have good games, and I think Brady's going to be a strong play as a result of that. It's his strength, right? And that's where he excels. He's throwing over the middle.
Right. Actually, I'm going to give you a more accurate stat line for Brandon Cooks. He's going to have one catch for 13 yards, and he's going to get an end around this week. That's how they're going to try and use him. Right? Decoy, end around for some jet sweep that never is going to go anywhere. He may get like 5 yards out of the whole thing. The Broncos still have playmakers on defense, and they still have people that set the edge really well. And then he'll have one catch for 13 yards, and he'll be a decoy other than that. Everybody else is going to get the work in this, and that's part of being a Patriot and being a team player. That's just the way that it goes. If you opt into that team, that's the way that you have to be willing to play. So other than that, I think that's going to be just not really a very fantasy productive game. The Monday night game, however, should be fairly interesting. Jay Cutler of the Miami Dolphins looked like he actually had life last week, and he's going up against what I would consider a Jekyll and Hyde and Cam Newton against the Panthers. What do we make of this game, dude? Like, please tell me so that I can do something about it.
I mean, what I make of it is Devontae Parker is really good and Jay Cutler likes him. Every time I've seen him play, he makes one catch. It's like, man, that is a really good catch. If this guy would ever stay healthy for more than 4 weeks in a row, he might actually become something.
Yeah, that was a contender for catch of the year right there last
week. It was incredible, wasn't it? And Cutler likes throwing to him. I think that catch is, of course, only going to make Cutler more confident in throwing to him.
Oh yeah, he's rock hard now, dude.
This Panthers team Panthers defense is really good. They are the inverse of the Broncos defense. They are really, really strong up the middle and really not that great at
on the outside.
Position. And that's where Parker goes, right? Jarvis Landry is the inside guy and Parker is the outside guy. So it seems to me that it's a Parker week. The Dolphins running back situation is a mess. They both had good games last week because they both got touchdowns. Kenyon Drake and Damian Williams. I think this week they'll both struggle because, again, the strength of this Panthers team is the middle. That being said, in PPR leagues, Cutler did check down to them a whole lot. And so they both have potential for 5 catches for 20 yards or something.
Right.
On the Panthers side, I watched this game with great interest because it's a division game for our Saints. And I've been watching Cam's games with great interest all season.
And we've been watching him since he was at Auburn too. So
yeah, he ran the ball a lot more, a lot of designed runs. He probably had 6 or 8 designed runs in this game, and they worked. He looked good running the ball. He looked confident. He looked like he was having fun running the ball. He's still as erratic as they come throwing the ball. I mean, sometimes he throws a laser beam and it's right on target, and sometimes he throws it and it's not even close. And so I can't trust any of their downfield options because of that.
Yeah, I think that puts it pretty plainly to me. It's just McCaffrey's the only person I want on their side of the ball. I still don't trust Funchess yet, and I don't trust Cam at all. And we were talking about this when you and I were doing a little bit of film study before the stream started. He had Ed Dixon open so many times it just doesn't throw him the ball, right? And I don't know if he doesn't see it or if it's just not in the design or if they just don't like scoring. Maybe they don't like scoring points. Cam might have an aversion to that, but I don't know what it is. But he doesn't hit him when he's open, and if you don't hit Ed Dixon when he is open, I don't know when you're going to hit him. So that worries me about playing even him, which I've been pretty fervent about in the past couple of weeks. So yeah, I don't trust this Panthers offense a whole lot, and the Dolphins defense is not bad. I mean, they're not bad players. Like it's not a bad group. They've only allowed 20 points once or twice this season, I think, maybe twice.
They're solid defense.
What's that?
They're solid defense.
Yeah, they're solid defense, and they're not just going to roll over. Is my point. Yeah, I like Parker in this game as well. I like Damian Williams more than Kenyon Drake just because of the added check down bonus that I think he's the pass catching guy, and he has been. And I also think he's probably a little more talented and ability to take things to the house a little bit better than Kenyon Drake if he is given the opportunity. But I do think the Panthers will snuff that out pretty well this week. It was just good to see Cutler having signs of life last week, more than anything else to me. I don't think he was great. Like, I don't think he's all of a sudden really good, but just signs of life was nice. He should break some ribs more often.
Yeah, playing the Raiders helps too. But he did look like he was having a little more. He did look like he was having a little more fun.
Yeah, so. Without a doubt. I mean, it looked like he was ready to smoke some cigarettes out there. You know what I'm saying? he was looking nice. So, all right, Joe, give me your best fantasy value at running back this week, and then give me the person that you think is just the most overpriced, just wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole, think is pretty egregiously whacked out of their mind.
Well, I think we hit on Matt Forte a lot earlier, so I'm not gonna harp on him again. I know that this is at $6,100. I think Jordan Howard is outrageously cheap this week.
Yeah, I think that's probably a little too cheap.
I think he needs to be up in the 8,000s. I mean, if Leonard Fournette is 8,400, why is it Jordan Howard up there? I don't get it. He's going to get the same number of touches against a worse rush defense in a game with Chicago will certainly be close, if not winning most of the time. And I mean, they're not going to throw the ball. We've seen what happens when Chicago gets what they want, and what happens is they throw it 7 times. That happened in one game. They threw it 7 times. I mean, they're going to run the ball.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Give me the person who you think is the most overpriced.
Oh well, Aaron Jones. I mean, for the opposite reason, right? I mean, we saw how he's 6,400. He's more expensive than Jordan Howard, which I don't understand. But we saw what happened last week, which is that Ty Montgomery's back and healthy, and even Jamal Williams is getting some carries. Not to mention that this Packers offense can't do anything. So when they're playing a good Bears defense on the road, I don't see Aaron Jones living up to $6,400 when you can get Jordan Howard for $300 cheaper. It's nuts.
I think that's pretty fair. I'm going to go with the wide receivers on this one. I think that for me, it's a tie between. Actually, I'm just going to go with one. I think that Deshaun Jackson with Mike Evans being suspended and just going up against the Jets secondary, that's just they're fine. I mean, I trust Jamal Adams a lot on the back end, but he should get a lot of targets and possibilities, opportunity this week. And when when you give somebody who's that athletic a lot of opportunities, typically they make hay while the sun is shining. And at $4,900, it's just too good to pass up, right? If Deshaun Jackson gets 5 catches this week, he will return way more than $4,900 worth of value. It's just almost he's one of the highest average yards per target kind of guys in the league, and I just really like that return. On the other end, Adam Thielen is at $6,700, and he's more expensive than Stephon Diggs. If I'm taking anybody in that game, I'm taking Diggs. If I'm taking one of their receivers, and just $6,700 is up there with some of the higher echelon people this week. Golden Tate is $100 more and gets the Browns this week. Des Bryant, if he winds up playing and is healthy, could see a lot of targets from Dak this week. He's $6,900. I wouldn't play Michael Thomas because he's going up against one of the better passing defenses, but I mean, A.J. Green and Julio Jones are just $1,000 or so more. I'm looking for one of those guys, and then even some of the people that are cheaper on the chart, you can get Marvin Jones for $600 cheaper. You can get Sterling Shepard for over $1,000 cheaper. Those are just better options to me in that kind of price range. So I think Adam Thielen is a bit overpriced. Yeah, I think that's all we got for this week. Joe, if you have to pick up one person on the waiver wire, who you got?
The guy we've done this before. We did this with Corey Davis. The two guys coming back off injury soon. So the guys that you want to pick up the week before they come off is Corey Coleman. He might be back this weekend, but probably not. He'll probably be back next week. Corey Coleman with the Browns. He looked great when he was healthy, and we've seen what the best receiver on the Browns can do in the past when it's not Kenny Britt, and it's actually pretty good. It's what Terrell Pryor did last year and what Josh Gordon has done in the past.
And what Corey Coleman did this year, because it was excellent.
What Corey Coleman did the first game and a half this year. So I think he's a good one, and Greg Olsen also might be coming back soon. I think that he would give Cam an option that would be a useful down the field option.
Yeah, I think you're going to see them run a lot of 22 sets with one wide and Chris McCaffrey in the backfield, and I think that's where you're going to see them make the most hay while they're out of the later parts of the season. Joe, you could not have led me into this any better. I was going to talk about people that were injured on the waiver wire that you should talk about potentially picking up. This is the point in the season where if you need to make a playoff push, you should be looking at people who were hurt earlier in the season, if you've had them stashed on your IR, if you have an IR spot or anything like that. But if you don't have an IR spot, like most leagues do not, you need to start looking at people that were injured earlier in the season, that were put on IR to start the season, things like that. Those guys are going to be coming back, making appearances, and some of those guys could be really big boons to your roster moving forward. Other than that, that's all we got for this week. Sorry we went a little long, but went about an hour and a half this week. We'll try and keep it a little more brief next weekend. But until next Wednesday, we'll catch you guys later. Peace out.
Stay classy.